The message came in broken pulses, the way fear sounds when you have to turn it into code. Ships in the Strait of Malacca heard it first, or so the later accounts say. A distress call, spare and terrible. All officers, including the captain, dead, lying in chart room and on bridge. Possibly whole crew dead. A pause, more keying. Then, one last line the listeners would never forget. I die. The ocean went quiet again. Good evening, and welcome to Midnight Horror Society. Here we take the strange and the chilling and tell them slowly, like whispers meant for the night. Before we begin, take a second to like the video and subscribe only if you feel at home here. In the comments, tell me where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. It's always comforting to see how many of us are awake together in the dark. So dim the lights. Let the sound of the night, rain, crickets, or just the quiet of your room settle around you. Get comfortable. And when you're ready, let's step into tonight's story. The sun was high when the American merchant vessel Silver Star altered course toward the coordinates, passed through listening posts. What they found, according to most tellings, was a freighter riding too still on bright water, unresponsive, drifting. Her name, painted on the hull, SS Ourang Medan, a name later investigators would search for in registries and fail to confirm. Hails went unanswered. Lines were thrown. A boarding party crossed in a hush that men remember for the rest of their lives. They say the first bodies were on the open deck, faces upturned, eyes wide, mouths fixed in something like a last warning. In the bridge and chart room, more of the same. Officers at their stations, lifeless, no wounds, no struggle beyond what their contorted limbs suggested. In the radio room, the operator lay slumped across his set. If this version is true, he would have been the one who sent the words the sea repeated. The ship showed no damage. The quiet felt wrong. The Strait of Malacca is one of the world's busiest waterways. Narrow, crowded, and for centuries, a corridor with a long memory for trouble. Traffic funnels there between Sumatra and the Malay Peninsula. The current keeps its own pace. The channel pinches down in places to a width that makes massive vessels think twice. Hundreds of ships pass daily. Bad luck passes there, too. By the late 1940s, the war was done, but post-war freight still moved under a veil of discretion. Goods changed hands. Flags changed registry. Names on hulls were not always a promise. In this climate, a ship with a Dutch-speaking crew and an Indonesian-sounding name, Ourang Medan, Man of Medan by some translations, could plausibly be seen, and just as plausibly be misremembered. What we have now is a legend that keeps circling back to June of 1947, sometimes 1948, when the supposed SOS was heard and the Silver Star allegedly found a ghost of a ship. In most versions, the first distress bulletin lacked position and origin. The fact that multiple ships reported hearing it gave the signal weight. The fact that it had no clear source made the situation urgent and strange. British and Dutch listening posts allegedly triangulated a rough location. The Silver Star was the nearest ship able to respond. The boarding party, expecting storm or sabotage, found the Ourang Medan outwardly intact. No smoke, no listing. Inside, a different story. Accounts agree on the tableau. Bodies frozen in attitudes of alarm, eyes open, mouths agape, as if all of them had tried to recoil from something no one could see. No blood, no bullet holes, no simple cause a sailor could point to and say, there it is. In some retellings, the boarding crew reported an uncanny chill on the Ourang Medan, despite hot tropical weather. Is that detail reliable? It appears in later versions, not in any primary document researchers can definitively name, but it persists because it fits the feeling the scene inspires. The wrong temperature for a bright day, the wrong air for living men. Faced with a derelict ship and a deck full of the dead, the Silver Star's captain chose the practical path. Put a line on her, tow her to port, let the authorities decide. Ropes were run, preparations were made. Then, according to nearly every version, something changed below decks. Smoke curled from the Ourang Medan's hold. The lines were cut in time. The freighter exploded once violently, lifted in the water, split, and sank. By the time bubbles stopped breaking the surface, there was no ship left to examine, no cargo to catalog, no exact cause to file. Whatever had happened went down with her. No one ever found out what killed the crew of the Ourang Medan. The ocean has always been good at keeping secrets, and when it does, people start inventing their own answers. The first idea that caught on was simple enough. A cargo hold filled with chemicals that were never meant to share the same space. According to that version, seawater might have leaked into drums of potassium cyanide and nitroglycerin. The mixture would have released poisonous gas, silently choking everyone on board, and when the vapors reached a certain concentration, one spark could have triggered the explosion that sent the ship under. It explains almost everything, except the questions that matter most. If the air was so toxic, why did the rescuers who climbed aboard live to tell the story? And if the deaths were quick, why were the bodies twisted in such visible agony? It's a clean theory, but not a convincing one. Then there's a darker possibility, the kind that belongs to the gray years after the war. Some researchers believe the Ourang Medan wasn't just another freighter, but a ghost ship in transit, carrying something it was never supposed to carry. They point to tabun, a nerve agent created in Nazi Germany and shared with Japan during the final months of the conflict. When the war ended, tabun was hunted, traded, hidden. If a small, unmarked vessel had been hired to move the last of it through quiet channels, a single leak could have wiped out the crew in minutes. Tabun paralyzes before it kills. It locks every muscle in the body. That could explain the rigid postures, the open mouths, the eyes that refuse to close. And because the gas breaks down quickly in air and water, the rescuers might have boarded a ship already purged of its poison. But there's a problem. No documents, no declassified records, nothing that ties the substance or the voyage to a ship named Ourang Medan. Others think the mystery has a simpler human core. They say there never was a ship by that name, only a different vessel, renamed at sea. A smuggling run gone wrong, cargo hold full of contraband or unstable chemicals that caught fire. When the explosion came, the owners erased the evidence by erasing the name. That would explain the missing paperwork, the non-existent registry. But like the others, it's just an echo in the fog, plausible, never proven. And then there are those who whisper that none of it happened at all, that the story began as a sailor's tale, told, retold, and eventually printed, until the legend grew larger than the ocean it was supposed to haunt. Maybe the Ourang Medan is no more real than the ghost ships that drift through folklore. Or maybe somewhere deep below the Indian Ocean, what's left of her still holds the truth, a truth that has never decided whether it wants to be found. If you try to trace the Ourang Medan through official records, the trail turns cold almost immediately. Maritime registries from the period don't show a ship by that name anywhere. Not in Dutch, not in British, not in American listings. Some say that proves the story was a fabrication from the start. Others argue it only proves that Ourang Medan wasn't her real name, that she'd been repainted and renamed at sea to disguise what she was really carrying. There is, however, one small anchor in print. In 1952, the U.S. Coast Guard circulated a short notice describing a mysterious distress incident somewhere in the region. It matched the basic outline of the story: the SOS, the drifting freighter, the sudden explosion. Skeptics later pointed out that the Coast Guard report might have been summarizing a newspaper article instead of the actual case file, and no original logs or coordinates have ever surfaced to confirm it. 2 years later, in 1954, a German writer named Otto Mielke published a detailed account of the event. He claimed to know the route, even the type of cargo, volatile chemicals that could have turned the ship into a floating bomb. But Mielke's research appeared after the legend had already been circulating. No primary witnesses were cited, only retellings of retellings. And that brings us to perhaps the strangest absence of all. No authenticated survivor statements. No verified testimony from the men of the Silver Star who supposedly boarded the doomed vessel. Every quote, every fragment of dialogue you hear today traces back to magazines, newsletters, or sea stories, never an official record. So what's left is a kind of phantom evidence. Enough smoke to imagine a fire, but not enough fire to warm your hands. Sailors tell each other two kinds of stories: the ones that explain the sea, and the ones that admit the sea doesn't care if you understand it. The Ourang Medan belongs to the second kind. It asks for belief and gives you a hole in the water instead. If it happened the way the popular version says, something aboard that ship turned breathable air into a weapon, and death moved as silently as a rumor. If it didn't happen, then thousands of retellings made it true in another way, true as a warning about how quickly we know becomes we heard. Either way, the image remains: a bright day, a quiet hull, a radio room where a man tries to make meaning out of panic by tapping brass on brass. All officers dead, possibly whole crew dead. I die. Then nothing, then smoke. Then a blast so clean, it erases its own evidence. Sometimes the most unsettling mysteries are the ones that refuse to end. Without a wreck site or a registry trail, this story continues to drift, neither fully afloat nor fully sunk, asking the same question every time it passes a new listener. If an answer went down with her, who decided it should? Have you ever noticed how the sea holds two truths at once? That what we can't confirm still finds a way to be believed, and what we can prove sometimes changes nothing. This was Midnight Horror Society. Dark curiosity for sleep. Until your next midnight session. Sleep well.